Hey everyone, my name is Sydney Weaver and I'm a 9-time gold medals professional speed cuber, which basically just means I work to solve Rubik's Cubes really quickly. See a demo here. But along with solving Rubik's Cubes quickly, I also like to dive deep into the math behind Twisty puzzles. And today, in this G4G14 preview, I want to talk to you about parity and how it plays a huge role in Twisty puzzles. Whenever you think of parity, your mind probably jumps to something like the 7 bridges problem or the 15 puzzle. And while these are great demonstrations of parity, they lack a few key elements that Twisty puzzles have. And that is that Twisty puzzles are three-dimensional and they have a lot more elements interacting with one another. Let's first take a look at the 2x2 cube and begin to establish some rules of what we can and can't do. The best way we can do this is to see what happens during a single turn. If we were to label each one of these pieces 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then execute a single turn, we would see that 1 is now where 2 was, 2 is now where 3 was, 4 is now where 1 was. And this stands true regardless of doing 1 turn, 5 turns, or 50 turns. It's just 1 turn plus 1 turn plus 1 turn. And we can say that, okay, an even number of swaps is occurring when we do this, regardless of how many turns we do. But as soon as we look at something like the 3x3, we start to run into some additional elements. We now have centers and edges. They play a huge role in how the rules of parity work within Twisty puzzles. First, let's explore the centerpieces. We can note that the centerpieces never change position, barring physically removing the caps like this. We can see that yellow is always opposite white, orange is always opposite red, blue is always opposite green. And what this tells us is that each piece only has one solved position, such as this piece is only solved if it is specifically right here. The next thing we need to look at with something like the 3x3 or any bigger n by n by n puzzle is that each single turn affects multiple subgroups. And if we were to label the 3x3 similar to how we did the 2x2, we'll see that still an even number of swaps occurs. But we can take note that this piece right here, piece number 5, does not change position. So here I have my cube entirely mixed up, and if I decided that I wanted to solve it just one piece at a time, I could start with this piece right here and say, okay, it needs to go right here, and count this as one swap. Then if I were to take this piece and put it right here, that would count as a second swap. So I'm going to quickly count through, and we'll see that the numbers are going to either have to be even or odd. In any event, they're going to have to correspond with each other. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that tells me, and we can see that piece number 10 right here belongs right here, so that's how we've reached the end of our cycle. We can say that, okay, the corner pieces, before we even begin counting them, have to either be 2, 4, 6, and that's it. There's no other numbers that they could be. So I start with this one, goes here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's one way to look at even parity. And this is something that these centers cause. Let's take a look at an easier example. So right now on this cube, the corners are completely solved and the edges have 3 missing. So the corners, their cycle or swaps would be 0 because they're already solved, meaning that for the edges, it either has to be 2, 4, or some other even number. And you might say, hey, that's 3 edges mixed up. But it's actually not quite how you think. So if I were to take this edge and put it right here, and this edge and put it right here, that would leave only one final spot for this piece. And I can do that in this fashion. If I were to take this piece, swap them around, you can see this edge is now right here. I can take this one and put it into this spot. So this piece only has one spot it will be able to go to. Throughout this video, I've been talking mostly about how the edges and corners affect one another, but there's still one critical piece that I do need to cover, and that is the centerpieces. So in this cube right here, I've actually decided to remove the centerpieces, and in doing so, I've been able to create an otherwise illegal state on the cube. If I were to try solving these pieces in the same way I did the other edge pieces, you'll soon see that I'm going to run into some issues. So if I decided to take this piece and put it right here, this piece and put it right here, I'll soon find out that I've run into an otherwise impossible position, and the only way I could solve it is if I were to move the centerpieces, like so. And you might be like, whoa, how? You already said earlier you can't move the centerpieces. Well, that's right, they're always going to stay in the same position relative to one another. But if I take a cube like this and intentionally mis-solve them, and we can see that now because there are actual colors on it, we can see that this has been moved one slice away, or they've had an even number of swaps. And since this hasn't affected the corner pieces in any way, we don't need to worry about the corner cycle. Typically, when we keep the center pieces solved correctly, that means that they're not relevant to our cycle. But in this instance, we decided to change that and say, hey, let's ignore the corners and instead mess up the centers. And in this way, we're able to create what would be deemed illegal. But this is how we can prove that the 3x3 has even parity, because as long as we keep the center pieces solved, as they should be, because currently a whole bunch of this is unsolved, we can say it has even parity. Now, I know that's been a big build-up for that one revelation, but that's probably about all the time I have, but I hope to, at the next G4G, give a lecture on the 4x4 and the Megaminx and how their parity is affected by all this stuff we just learned today. Thank you so much for watching.